He is risen. This startling statement is first heard from the mouth of an angel, and it's recorded in Matthew chapter 28, verse 6. A group of women have gone to the tomb, and this remarkable statement is made. This is found in Matthew 28, verse 6. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. I want to think about that phrase, as he said, because the angel is pointing them back to what Jesus had previously said about the resurrection. Of all things that you could not fake, you could not pre-predict your resurrection and then see that take place. This is what confirms that he is divine, but it also confirms some very significant things about his relationship to us. Let's talk about that today. Well, I want to take you to 4 places in Matthew today where Jesus predicted in advance not only his death, but his resurrection. Well, this says that he indeed is the Savior because only God himself could know the future and pull off something as amazing as the resurrection. But in each of these encounters, it teaches us something about us and our relationship to him. So let's take a look at those. The first one is found in Matthew chapter 12 and verses 38, 39, 40 and following. And a group of his critics have gathered around and asked a sign of him. In other words, prove you are who you claim to be. And here's what he says to them when they give him this question. And he says this in chapter 12, verse 39. But he answered and said to them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Speaking of the 3 days he was in the tomb. First of all, if we really understand this fact that Jesus is alive, he is risen, and the fact that he pre-predicted this, it will turn your doubts into faith. These people came with all their doubts. In fact, he calls them an adulterous generation. They were those who once believed in God or who at least had a heritage of belief in God, and now they wouldn't believe in Jesus. He calls them back to belief. He says, this is going to be the sign. I'm only going to spend 3 days in the grave. Everybody else who is buried spends an indefinite, permanent, from our point of view, time in the grave. So it turns us into people of faith. How about you? Maybe you've had an experience where you once were a person of faith or connected to church or were with God's people or had a heritage of that, but now you've drifted from that. Here's what should pull you back. Here's what should dispel all your doubts. The fact that Jesus is risen. He is risen indeed. He is risen as he said. If he can pull that off, what more do you need? He says, this is the sign that is given to you. Now I want to take you to the next passage. It's found in Matthew 16. Let's go there. Matthew 16, verse 21. From that time, Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised the 3rd day. But Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord, for this shall not happen to you. And he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan, for you are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. Well, see, Peter had just confessed earlier in the same chapter that he believed that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God. But then when Jesus starts talking about his death, and Peter completely glossed over the resurrection, he began to rebuke him. By the way, if you ever start rebuking Jesus, it is not going to end well. So Jesus ends up rebuking Peter. But here's where we need to go from. Peter was left with questions. What is this all about? Why is he going to die? Because his expectation was completely different. To go from those sorts of questions to the real answers in life, you need to connect to God through the risen Savior. You know, what is life all about? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What am I going? What is life's purpose? All those great questions, then all the questions that descend from those questions can ultimately be answered in the fact that God made us, God sustains us, God can save us, and Jesus is the Savior. Verified. Why and how? By the resurrection. Why? Because he wants us to know. So he told Peter in advance that he would be raised again the 3rd day. And he calls us back to this reality that we need to go from our questions to the answers that are found in him. Now, let's go to number 3. This one's found in the next chapter, Matthew 17. Let's take a look at Matthew 17, verse 22. Now, while they were staying in Galilee, Jesus said to them, the Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men. and they will kill him, and the third day he will be raised up. And they were exceedingly sorrowful. Well, they were sorrowful because he's saying something about his death. They didn't want to hear that because they didn't even want to process it. They wanted to avoid that at all costs. They certainly missed the resurrection because even the women were shocked as they came to the tomb, and the angel had to tell them, he's risen, as he said. Don't you get it? Because Jesus had said this, he had predicted this in as plain of language as ever could have been stated. It was just plain. He'll be raised again the third day. But notice it says in that text that they were sorrowful. You have some sorrows in life? You want to see your sorrows turned into joy? Here's what I suggest you do. You come and put your faith, your confidence, your hope, your all, your life into the hands of the risen Savior. Maybe we are a little skeptical. How can we trust in someone who is seemingly far off and far removed from us in history? Well, the fact is he is not far off because he's here with us. He's all around us. He is here now because he is alive, for he is risen, as he said. You can go from your sorrows into great joy if you will trust in the Lord. One more stop on a little tour of Jesus' predictions. This one's found in Matthew chapter 20. Verse 17. Now Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples aside on the road and said to them, notice now, it's while he's right on the way to Jerusalem for his last journey, and he says, no, we're about there, but let me tell you this. Here's what he said. Behold, we're going up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and discourage and to crucify, and the third day he will rise again. Absolutely plain, not only in all of its parts, but also in the process. It's going to go from here to here to here to here, and it's an exacting detail. And he tells them just before these events are about to take place. Well, they still missed it. But the next story is interesting. After he just tells them that he's going to die and be raised again, the mother of two of the disciples comes and says, Jesus, when you set up your kingdom, he just said he's going to die and be raised again. Nothing about the kingdom being set up, Israel being restored. But he says that was their expectation. But she says, make sure my sons are number one and number two in your new administration. There was still this note of selfishness. What can I get out of the whole scheme of life? Well, here Jesus, in talking about the fact that he will be raised again, wants to move us from our selfishness to service. Selfishness to service. It's not about us getting a position. It's about us serving him. You know, our lives and purposes, the purpose of our life is all wrapped up in him. We are here for his purposes. And once you connect with that, you really fit into his purpose in life, and we find the ultimate satisfaction in life. We find that life works smoother, not perfect, but smoother than it would otherwise. And it gives deep meaning and value to the life we're living. All because we have a Savior that will take our situation as we are, as selfish as sometimes we are, and turn that into service. So here's what he says. When the angel says he is risen as he said, it is a Savior who Jesus had said multiple times that he would rise again. This is a Savior that will turn your doubts into fear, your questions into answers, your sorrows into joy, and your selfishness into service. He wants to change you as you live and serve and worship the risen Savior. For he is risen, as he said. Well, I hope that video was a blessing to you, and I want to thank you for visiting with us here at Living the Word today. Really would like to ask you to help us. We're trying to grow our subscriber base like everyone else. But if you like this video, hit that like button. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. It's usually right down there below. That would really help us. If you want to take it one step further, hit that little bell icon. That's the notification icon. Every time we have new content, it'll be delivered right to you. But I want to thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your prayers. And if you want to know more about this ministry, please visit livingthewordtoday.com. You have a blessed day.